Introduction. It all started with a simple, gnawing feeling, something that just didn't seem right. After 15 years of marriage, I thought I knew my husband Mark better than anyone. But over the past few months, things began to change. Mark was distant, preoccupied, and often working late. I wanted to believe that it was just the stress of his job, but deep down, I knew there was more to it. And so I set out to uncover the truth, not knowing that it would lead me to a dark, twisted path of revenge I never thought I was capable of walking. The discovery. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found the first clue. Mark had left his phone at home, something he never did. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a peek. I wasn't proud of it, but something inside me screamed I needed to know. My heart pounded as I scrolled through his messages until I found the one that made my blood run cold. Her name was Sarah, and the text between them left little to the imagination. My hands shook as I read the words. They'd been seeing each other for months, and from what I could gather, they were getting serious. Rage and betrayal surged through me, but I knew I couldn't confront him, not yet. If I wanted to destroy him, I had to play this smart. The planning. For the next few weeks, I played the role of the oblivious wife. I smiled when he came home late, pretended not to notice the change in his behavior, and even encouraged him to take time for himself, knowing full well he was spending it with her. But behind the scenes, I was meticulously planning my revenge. First, I hired a private investigator to gather concrete evidence of the affair. I didn't want just texts, I wanted photos, videos, anything that would confirm my suspicions. The investigator was thorough, and within 2 weeks, I had everything I needed. Photos of them together, records of their hotel stays, even footage of them walking hand in hand. It was enough to ruin him in every possible way. Next, I started to isolate our finances. We had a joint account, but I began slowly transferring money into a separate account that only I had access to. I didn't take it all at once. I didn't want to raise any suspicions. Instead, I siphoned it off bit by bit until I had enough to secure my future and leave him with nothing. Setting the trap. Once I had everything in place, I decided it was time to set the trap. Mark had no idea what was coming. I suggested we take a weekend trip to our lake house, something we hadn't done in years. He agreed, probably relieved that I was still clueless about his affair. I pretended to be excited, packing our bags, planning our meals, and making everything seem perfect. But in the back of my mind, I was going over every detail of what I had planned. Before we left, I made sure that all the evidence I had gathered was ready to be deployed. I had the private investigator compile everything into a neat little package, complete with timestamps and summaries. Then I created an anonymous email account and scheduled the delivery of the package to several key people in Mark's life: his boss, a few of his closest friends, and of course his precious Sarah. The email would go out Saturday evening, giving me just enough time to enjoy watching Mark's world crumble around him. The execution. The lake house was as beautiful as ever, a place that held so many happy memories. It was almost ironic that it would be the setting for Mark's downfall. We arrived late Friday evening and everything was going according to plan. I played the doting wife, cooking his favorite meal, pouring his favorite wine, and laughing at his tired jokes. He had no idea that I was counting down the hours until everything fell apart. Saturday morning, we went for a walk by the lake. Just like old times, Mark seemed relaxed, more so than he had been in months, and for a moment, I almost doubted myself. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, and the betrayal that hardened my resolve. As the day wore on, I could see the tension starting to build in Mark. His phone buzzed a few times, and each time he glanced at it with a furrowed brow. He didn't say anything to me, but I knew he was wondering why Sarah hadn't contacted him. Little did he know the real storm was about to hit, the unraveling. It started around 6 p.m., right after dinner. Mark's phone began blowing up with messages and calls, and he excused himself to take a few in private. I stayed in the living room, sipping my wine, a smile playing on my lips as I heard his muffled voice rise in panic. He returned to the living room, pale and shaken. "We need to talk," he said, his voice trembling. About what I asked innocently, though I already knew what was coming. He looked at me, his eyes filled with fear. "There's been a misunderstanding. Someone sent some pictures to my boss and friends. It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," I interrupted, my voice cold. "So you're telling me those pictures of you and Sarah, the hotel receipts, the texts, Those are all just misunderstandings. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I stood up, walking over to the coffee table where I'd placed a manila envelope. I handed it to him, and as he opened it, his face turned an even whiter shade of pale. I've known for weeks, Mark. I know everything. And now, so does everyone else. He collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, I never meant to hurt you. Sorry I spat. You're only sorry because you got caught. And now, you're going to pay the price. The aftermath. Mark lost everything. His boss fired him on the spot, citing the moral clause in his contract. His friends, who had once admired him, turned their backs, disgusted by the betrayal. And Sarah, well, she wanted nothing to do with him once she realized his life was falling apart. I filed for divorce the following week, and thanks to the evidence I had gathered, I got everything: the house, the car, and full custody of our 2 children. Mark was left with nothing but his guilt and regret. I wish I could say that revenge felt as sweet as I had imagined it would. In some ways it did. Watching him squirm, seeing him lose everything, there was a certain satisfaction in that. But at the same time, it was bittersweet. I had loved Mark once, deeply, and it was hard to reconcile the man I had married with the man who had betrayed me so completely. But in the end, I knew I had done what I needed to do. I had protected myself, my children, and our future. And I had shown Mark that actions have consequences, sometimes far more devastating than he could ever have imagined. Conclusion. It's been 2 years since the divorce, and life has moved on. I've found peace, knowing that I did what I had to do. I'm stronger now, more confident, and ready to face whatever comes next. As for Mark, I don't know where he is, and I don't care to. The chapter of my life that included him is over, and I'm more than happy to leave it behind. Revenge may not always be the best answer, but in my case, it was the only one that made sense. And I don't regret it, not for a second. Thanks for joining us on this intense journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another gripping tale. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart strong. See you in the next story on Story Voyage.